Imagine waking up in an apartment that's barely bigger than 2 phone booths put together, having only had 4 hours of sleep. You stayed up late because you have to work multiple jobs just to cover rent, food, and student loans in an expensive city like Seoul. You start working your first job of the day, trying your best to not make any mistake, but you inevitably do given your chronic lack of sleep. Your boss chews you out for it, but all you can think about is the 2 additional shifts you have later that night. You do hope to find someone to date and married and have kids in the future, and perhaps you aspire to buy a house for this future family. But with each passing day, this future seems increasingly impossible to obtain. The housing prices and the cost of living continue to rise while your wage remains stagnant. So one day you might feel that you've had enough. You're burnt out. You hate your life. You want to give up because, well, it'd be nice to sleep a bit more than 4 hours a night and not live in such a claustrophobic place, even though this means you would need to move back with your parents. Perhaps you're okay with that because you've decided that you would never own a home or have a family. You've given up on that future. Just surviving day by day is enough for now. This is the reality of many millennials and Gen Zs living in Korea today. So much so that there's a new Korean term coined for this called Npo generation. Po is short for the Korean word pogihada, which means to give up. The term used to be called 3Po generation, referring to a generation of people who have given up on the 3 major milestones in life: dating, marriage, and children. The term then expanded to 5Po generation, including the 2 additional milestones of home ownership and career goals. And this number just continued to increase to track additional life goals that people are giving up. And we got 7Po generation and later 9Po generation. And at some point, people just stopped counting and just call it Npo generation, with the letter N referring to an unknown number. The term now refers to people who have given up on life's pursuit in general. Now, this sounds sad. There should be nothing good about a generation of disenfranchised young people giving up on life. But I'm not here to simply complain about how dark and bleak it all is. Believe it or not, I'm actually here to inspire you with the story. But in order to get to how this dreadful social phenomenon could have any thread of silver lining, we need to talk about the context of why this happens in the first place. In other words, what are the social and cultural and political and economic factors that resulted in a society in which young people are giving up on life? We can start with the Korean culture around universities. While here in the West, we have trending slogans like college is a scam and escape the matrix, the older generation of Koreans love universities. To them, college is as much a place to acquire skills and employment prospect as it is a place to acquire social prestige and fulfill cultural expectations. So much so that many of them push their children to attend universities without really questioning the practical utility of a college degree. This resulted in the most educated society in the modern world. Korea had the highest level of tertiary education amongst all OECD countries for its youth population in 2023, with nearly 70% of young people having a college degree of some kind. This seems like a good thing, but it's created certain problems. To start, it decreased the value of college degree. Right? Diamond is valuable because it's rare. If diamonds are as abundant as water, no one will buy them. This intuition can be applied in a way to college degree as well. If the number of jobs stay the same, the more people have college degree, the less valuable they become in the job market. This is especially the case in the Korean economy, which can be described as rather monopolistic. The Korean economy is dominated by a handful of large family-owned conglomerates known as Chaebols. Chaebols dominate key industries in Korea and have significant influence over the economy. It is therefore hard for new and smaller companies to compete with them. This decreased market competition leads to fewer job creation, which means more highly educated college graduates have to fight over the same number of jobs. This results in underemployment, where many young Koreans settle for jobs they are either overqualified for or jobs that are not relevant to their education. These jobs often don't pay as well, causing the necessity to work multiple jobs to save up for the future. And all this happens against the backdrop of the Korean society, which is wealthy but with large inequality and not the best social mobility. A significant portion of Korea's wealth is owned by the top echelon of the population, with a considerable portion controlled by the Chaebol families. Additionally, a recent survey in Korea showed that the parents' background was key to their children's success. This means that if you're not born into a wealthy family, it's much harder for you to get ahead in life. Instead, you'd watch your peers who have won the genetic lottery fly by as you remain stuck in place, seemingly no matter how hard you work, which likely contributed to many young people joining the Empo Generation Club. This is reflected in this year's record high number of young Koreans who have given up on looking for jobs altogether. Now, this seems pretty dark at this point. We've got a group of highly educated young people who find themselves in a society that is wealthy but oppressive. They see the abundance that is all around them, yet out of reach. They see wealth being enjoyed by the top echelon of society, while they are at the bottom fighting for scraps. And now they've grown tired of this fight and given up on life. At this point, you might find my earlier remark about this story being one of inspiration confusing, because what can be so inspiring about this depressing picture? Well, my friends, this is where things get interesting. This is where it gets good. Underneath this rather depressing social phenomenon is something much more hopeful and promising. Despite what it seems on the surface, Empo generation is not just about surrendering in the face of life's difficulty. It also represents a rebellion of sort. This rebellion is quiet and subtle, yet firm in its intention. It's almost too nuanced to detect, but once you see it, it's impossible to look away. What we have here is a rebellion against societal norm, where young people have decided to charter their own course rather than blindly following the rat race of society. They're not giving up on these life goals. Rather, they are actively rejecting them. They're not saying, oh, I can't have this, therefore I'm sad. They're saying, fuck you, I don't want it. They have considered the goals that their societies and culture and family have conditioned them to want, and decided that these goals are not for them, that they would start thinking for themselves and pursue something else instead. There are two parallel ideas that started trending simultaneously with this phenomenon of Empo generation in Korea that illustrates this. The first is YOLO, which stands for You Only Live Once. It's an idea that encourages people to embrace life and take risks and live in the moment. YOLO has become a popular hashtag on Korean social media, and its influence on young Korean is evident in their spending habits. Recent trends indicate that Korean youth are increasingly engaging in higher spending, particularly on luxury goods, and accumulating significant credit card debt. Now, this is unusual, especially in contrast with Korea's eastern and western neighbors, namely Japan and China. Japan has always been a frugal country, and that's not changing with their current generation. And Chinese youth seems to have become so afraid of spending money that it's partially causing the economic slowdown of the Chinese economy. Korean youth, on the other hand, are making it rain with credit cards like there's no tomorrow. Now, YOLO, in my opinion, is a drug that can be healing or killing depending on the dosage. In moderation, it promotes a daring attitude to seize the day, but it's clear that at least some Koreans are overdosing on YOLO, racking up tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debts and frankly at risk of bankruptcy. So YOLO by itself does not necessarily indicate something positive. It only reveals a shift in priority from the future to the present. But when coupled with the other trend, the story becomes clearer. Trending alongside hashtag YOLO is another hashtag that seems to mean the same thing, but with a very different implications. This hashtag term is called Sohwakhaeng. Unlike YOLO, Sohwakhaeng means the small but certain happiness in life. Sohwakhaeng does not require a heroic effort to obtain. Rather, it is already here now. You might just be overlooking it. It's the simple joy of watering your plants, or sipping a glass of ice water, or driving to work in the morning while watching the sunrise. If YOLO represents a change of priority from the future to the present, then Sohwakhaeng represents what one discovers in the present upon this change of priority. It's the realization that one might have been foolish all along, chasing after a way of living dictated by society while overlooking the joy that is already here. That we've been so busy trying to fulfill everyone else's expectation that we've forgotten about the one person that is more important still, ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that all of the Empo generation are positive in this way. I'm sure there are some youths who are truly disenfranchised and have given up on life with no silver lining. And to them, Empo generation might represent nothing more profound than a few months of reckless spending and mountains of credit card debts. For some Korean youths, Empo generation is nothing more than a coping mechanism, but for others, it represents a restatement of value. They're challenging the traditional definitions of success. Rather than pursuing conventional milestones dictated by society, they start to focus on attainable and personally meaningful goals instead. Some of them have stopped looking for conventional jobs, instead opting for gig works, freelancing, and entrepreneurship. Many started practicing minimalism and prioritizing their life over their work. Some of them might take a year off and travel the world, or otherwise explore creative pursuits and other passion projects. In general, this reflects an interesting cultural shift across generation in Korea. Korea, as with other East Asian countries heavily influenced by Confucianism, are collectivist society. They traditionally prioritize social cohesion over individual happiness. Empo generation then represents a cultural movement towards the individualistic side, where young people are starting to prioritize their own happiness over fulfilling the expectations of the group they belong to. Now, I'm not one to reject tradition for its own sake. In my opinion, there's a reason why certain lessons survived through the generations. But at the same time, I recognize that we live in a world that is changing faster than any other time in human history. This means that although certain lessons from the past remain useful in general, the way that we apply them in the present might need to change. So if Empo generation represents young people's exploration outside of tradition, I hope they eventually find their ways back to it. That through their adventure, they find ways to integrate the lessons of the past with the ever-changing future and apply them gainfully in the present. And I hope that we too find courage in their story to do the same in our own life.